Good day, my friends. This is Astis with part 4 of my Baldur's Gate 3 full release video series. In this series, I go over and give my opinions on all of the changes that Larian has confirmed will be in the full release of Baldur's Gate 3 in their community update number 20. I mean, this update was massive. I've already made 3 videos that are hours long. This will be number 4, where I go over all of the spells that Larian has announced. Actually, I not only am going over all the spells Larian's announced in Community Update number 20, but with the help of Reddit, I was able to track down spells that they've announced in other places in social media, like TikTok or Twitter. I will be reviewing all of those as well. Altogether, there are 47 spells I will be reviewing in this video. Before we dive into the actual tier list, I do have to make 2 disclaimers. Personally, I hate starting a video with a bunch of disclaimers, so we'll try to keep this short. It's just, given what I've seen in the comments on my last videos, this is probably necessary to say. First off, every opinion I am about to express in this video is entirely speculative. I do not know what's good in the full release of Baldur's Gate 3 because I haven't played the full release of Baldur's Gate 3. And of course, I know that you can't know what's good until you actually test it in the game. I'm a very firm believer in that. That said, we're at a point where none of us can play the game, we all want to play it, and we're just looking ahead. And it's kind of fun to look ahead and speculate and try to think of what will be good. So that is what this video is about. What I've done is I've taken all of the confirmed spells that are in the full release of the game that we haven't had in early access, and then I take all the rules on those spells from the Wizards of the Coast printed material, and I'm just going to read those rules and base my opinion off of that. But of course, I know Larian can change the way these spells work for their game. Sometimes there are spells that you would think would work in theory, but when you actually play, they don't work well, or vice versa. I get all of that. I'm just speculating. That said, I do have extensive experience both playing and analyzing this game in early access. I think of all the YouTubers out there, I am one of the better ones for understanding what will be good from a tactical perspective in Baldur's Gate 3. So, of course, we're just speculating, but as far as speculation goes, I think I'm going to give you some quality takes. Alright, that's that. The second disclaimer has to do with the meaning of my tiers. I'm going to rank all of these spells on a tier list, and I recognize that many of my viewers are new to my channel. They've just got in the last week and a half, so you don't know all of the videos I've made in the past in early access that use this tier system, so I'll just explain it now. I borrowed a 5-part tier system from the brilliant Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 streamer / YouTuber Devayorn. The 5 tiers are S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and RP tier. I'm going to go through all of them and explain what they mean, starting at the top with S tier. For me, S tier means a spell that is consistently amazing and impactful, or a spell that you can make a whole build or team composition around. And those are 2 very different things. Some S tier spells are just going to be good in every run, regardless of team composition. Take the level 1 spell Sleep, for example. It's just always good. But there are other spells which I give S tier to, which on a standard build or composition might actually be bad. A good example of this is, in early access, was the spell Flameblade. A spell I'm kind of famous for. I've made a lot of builds around Flameblade. Flameblade on a standard build and in a standard use isn't a good spell. It's probably a low B tier, maybe even C tier spell. However, there's all kinds of tricks you can do with the spell to actually make it one of the best ways to weaponize your bonus action and your concentration slot. If you wield it in your offhand, if you combine it with certain items in the game, if you build around it the right way, it actually becomes a really, really good spell. So that's an example of a spell that I give an S tier to, which isn't just consistently amazing in every build or team composition. Moving on to A tier now. For me, A tier means a spell that is either consistently good or situationally amazing. Similarly, B tier means consistently mid and average or situationally good. C tier is the tier for spells that kind of underperform in most situations. They're just consistently bad spells, or maybe bad spells that can be situationally just middling. And then finally, our P tier is the tier for spells that aren't actually tactical spells. They're spells mostly for out of combat, and they don't have impact on combat. Or spells that have an impact on combat, but are just categorically worse than a competing spell, in which case there is no reason to cast it except for RP reasons. Now, I don't name it RP tier because I'm dumping on role-playing. I actually love role-playing. My channel is mostly about tactics and optimization, but I recognize that there are some spells which aren't good from a tactics and optimization standpoint, but that you'd still want to pick for roleplay reasons, so that's why I give them roleplay tier. Alright, that's the disclaimers. Let's dive into the tier list now. Alright, here we are with the new spells, starting at level 1. I haven't organized these in alphabetical order or anything. We're just going to go by spell level. So, at level 1, we've had 2 new spells confirmed. They are Ice Knife and Shield, starting with Ice Knife. This is a first level conjuration spell. It costs an action to cast, and it's a kind of like a mix between a single target damage spell and an AoE damage spell. What happens is you pick a target within 60 feet, and you make an attack roll. If that attack hits, that target takes 1d10 piercing damage, but everyone within 5 feet of them takes 2d6 cold damage. So you're going to be dealing, the priority damage is actually on the AoE, which is a little weird. To get the most out of this, you want a non-priority target to be standing around priority targets. Now, I know some people might be thinking, is this a double hit spell? It is not. Even if you miss the initial attack roll, the targets within 5 feet are still going to have to make a dexterity saving throw or take 2d6 damage. The fact that this is cold damage is really great. If you aren't familiar with Baldur's Gate 3, Larian has added a condition to the Create Water spell. It's called, funny enough, the Wet condition, which makes targets, among other things, it makes targets vulnerable to cold and lightning damage. So anytime you see cold and lightning damage, that's a big deal for us. It's the priority damage type in this game. But 2d6 still is not very much. There's the weird targeting. It's just a direct damage spell. I give this a B tier. Moving on to Shield. Shield's interesting. It's actually a reaction to cast, and you can cast it on a reaction when you are hit by an attack or targeted by the Magic Missile spell. If it's Magic Missile and you cast Shield with your reaction, it just cancels Magic Missile. You take no damage from the spell. If it's an attack, you add +5 bonus to your AC, and if that causes the attack to miss, then it misses. Moreover, you keep that +5 bonus to your AC for the next round until the start of your next turn. So for one round, you'll have a +5 bonus to your AC. This is really good. It is very likely, well, it's not very likely, but it's more likely than not that that +5 to your AC is going to make the attack miss, in which case you are using your reaction to cancel one attack, which is very efficient trade in 5e. Reactions usually aren't worth one attack, so spending a reaction in a spell slot to cancel one attack, awesome. And then on top of all that, you're getting a +5 bonus to your AC until your next reaction shows up. I mean, it costs a lot of spell slots, but if you spam one of these every turn, you're looking at a +5 bonus to your AC straight up. +5 is a lot of armor class in this game, guys. So Shield is an S tier spell easily, just from an action economy perspective. Incredible. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could have this on every character in the game. S tier for Shield. And that is it for level 1 spells. We can move on to the second level spells now. Starting with Enthrall. This is an enchantment spell. Costs an action. You weave a distracting string of words, causing creatures of your choice that you can see within range and that can hear you to make a wisdom saving throw. Any creature that can't be charmed succeeds in this saving throw automatically, and if you or your companions are fighting a creature, it has advantage on the save. On a failed save, the target has a disadvantage on wisdom perception checks made to perceive any creature other than you until the spell ends or until the target can no longer hear you. The spell ends if you are incapacitated and can no longer speak. Now, I'm glad we got this early because this is a great example of a role-playing spell. It's not that it's useless, but it does not have much use in combat. Technically, hiding in combat is a thing, but spending an entire action just to give advantage to your team on one save against one unit isn't really at all useful in combat. If you're casting this in combat, it's a very, very niche circumstance. So realistically, this is a spell that you are using outside of combat in order to infiltrate and steal, and it can be very useful for that, but that is an RP spell for us. So RP tier for Enthrall. Next up is Spiritual Weapon. This is one of my favorite spells in the game. It's a bonus action to cast, and it lasts 1 minute. It does not require concentration. Here's what it does. You create a floating spectral weapon within range that lasts for the duration or until you cast the spell again. When you cast a spell, you can make a melee spell attack against a creature within 5 feet of the weapon. On a hit, the target takes force damage equal to 1d8 plus your spellcasting modifier. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the weapon up to 20 feet and repeat the attack against a creature within 5 feet of it. Basically, here's what it does. When you cast a spell, you make a spell attack with a summoned weapon. So a spell attack will always use your spellcasting ability modifier, and the damage is equal to 1d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. So it's like making a weapon attack with your spellcasting ability modifier on your offhand when you cast the spell. And then every turn, you can spend a bonus action to do it again. So it's weaponizing your bonus action, concentration free, and it's using your spellcasting ability modifier. You can totally upcast this, and it gains 1d8 for every 2 slots above 2nd level. It's kind of bad scaling, but because this lasts 1 minute, and it's only taking your bonus action, it's kind of worth it sometimes to upcast. Now, that is how it works in tabletop, but there are a lot of spells that work like this, which Larian have reworked to actually function as proper summons. That is, they get their own turn, they can use their turn to move and take an attack action, and you are still free to use your bonus action. It functions very similarly to this tabletop implementation, except it's even cheaper from an action economy perspective. So it's very possible that Larian will do Spiritual Weapon like that, just like they did Flaming Sphere, for example. Either way, this is an incredible spell. Absolutely incredible. Weaponizing your bonus action, concentration free, S tier all the way. And that is it for the 2nd level spells. Alright, moving on now to 3rd level spells. This is the maximum level of spell available in early access so far. We're going to begin with the spell Aura of Vitality. This is a Paladin exclusive spell. It takes an action to cast and requires your concentration, lasts up to 1 minute or until you lose your concentration. Healing energy radiates from you in an aura with a 30 feet radius. Until the spell ends, the aura moves with you, centered on you. I mean, that's just what an aura is. I don't know why they had to specify that. You can use a bonus action to cause one creature in the aura, including you, to regain 2d6 hit point. It's kind of like weaponizing your bonus action, but as healing instead of an attack. Healing always hits, but the 2d6 hit points, that's what? 7, it's averaging 7 hit points around that you're healing with your bonus action. It's not a lot, and honestly, most of the value from a heal just comes from resurrecting characters that have been downed, and you can just do that with the Healing Word spell. Doesn't require concentration, doesn't take an action to cast initially. I don't really see a world where this is worth doing. Technically, it is good, except that it's a 3rd level spell, and it costs so much on your action economy initially. So yeah, even with Paladins, I imagine just using your concentration on Bless, and the extra damage you deal is probably going to save you more hit points in the long run just because you will kill enemies sooner. So yeah, Aura of Vitality is a C tier for me. That might be a little harsh. I mean, healing is useful, so maybe a low B tier, but that is Aura of Vitality. Next up is Conjure Barrage. This is a Ranger exclusive spell. It takes an action, and it's like an attack. So what happens is, you throw a non-magical weapon, or fire a piece of non-magical ammunition into the air to create a cone of identical weapons that shoot forward and then disappear. Each creature in a 60-foot cone must succeed on a dexterity saving throw. A creature takes 3 to 8 damage on a failed save or half as much damage on a successful one. The damage type is the same as that of the weapon or ammunition used as a component, so this is a saving throw spell attack in a 60-foot cone. A 60-foot cone is a very big cone. That part of it is cool. Now, it specifies that you cannot use a magical weapon or magical piece of ammunition. And I wonder if Larian will keep this, because the use that seems very interesting to me for this spell is actually to use it with one of their lightning arrows or one of their cold arrows, and then maybe converting this wide AoE cone into lightning or cold damage, which, as we've said, is very valuable. In that case, this might be good, but as it is, it's a low amount of damage that's spread to a lot of targets, which can add up to a lot of damage, but it's better to do less damage and to concentrate it on fewer targets, because you are more likely to actually cancel actions that way, and that is fundamentally the strategy of this game. I mean, it's still damage in a wide AoE. I give Conjure Barrage a B tier. Next up, Elemental Weapon. This is a spell available to Paladins again, Paladin exclusive. It takes an action to cast, it's touch range, and it is concentration up to 1 hour. A non-magical weapon you touch becomes a magic weapon. Choose one of the following damage types: Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. For the duration, the weapon has a +1 bonus to attack rolls and deals an extra 1d4 damage of the chosen type when it hits. When you upcast the spell 5th or 6th level, the bonus to attack rolls increases to +2, and the extra damage increases to 2d4. Now, it is the bonus to your attack rolls that is particularly viable, but by the time you're getting this spell, you probably already have +1 weapons. And then by the time you're able to upcast it, you probably already have +2 weapons. And the added damage is nice, but not enough to really make this worth the opportunity cost of a 3rd level spell slot, 1 action, and your concentration slot. So, as written right now, this is not a good spell. Probably a C tier spell. Now, if Larian changes it and allows it to stack on top of existing bonuses from enchanted weapons, this could be much better, probably a B or maybe even A tier spell in really specific builds, so probably B. Honestly, it's kind of low impact, the fact that it's on a single target, and so, yeah, there are better spells, but getting bonuses to attack and damage on your striker is technically always decent, so that's B tier in my book. Next up is Lightning Arrow. I think Lightning Arrow is, yes, this is a Ranger exclusive. We're just going back and forth here. Lightning Arrow is a bonus action to cast. It is concentration up to 1 minute. I believe this is kind of like a Paladin Smite spell, so it might be changed to function like Paladin Smite spells where they no longer require concentration, you just make them as a special attack. The next time you make a ranged weapon attack during the spell's duration, the weapon's ammunition, or the weapon itself, if it's a thrown weapon, transforms into a bolt of lightning. Make the attack roll as normal. The target takes 4 to 8 lightning damage on a hit, and half as much on a miss instead of the weapon's normal damage. Okay. Whether you hit or miss, each creature within 10 feet must make a dexterity saving throw. Each of these creatures take 2 to 8 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. So it's kind of like a better version of that ice knife spell that we talked about earlier, where you're targeting a single target and you're making an attack roll. And then whether you hit or miss, everyone within 10 feet of them also makes a dexterity saving throw. But the damages are much better, and all of it is lightning damage. I could see this being pretty good. I give it an A tier. Definitely good on any composition that's planning on exploiting the wet condition. Next up, Blinding Smite. This is a smite, so it's the bonus action, concentration up to 1 minute, but again, if I'm remembering right, Larian has changed these so they're just like an attack. It doesn't require concentration or anything like that. Your weapon flares with a bright light, and the attack deals an extra 3 to 8 radiant damage to the target. Additionally, the target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or be blinded until the spell ends. A blinded creature by the spell makes another Constitution saving throw at the end of its turns. On a successful save, it is no longer blinded. This is a Paladin exclusive spell. I give it a B tier. I mean, technically it's doing damage and potentially blinding a target. Blind is a pretty good condition, but for a 3rd level spell slot, it's really not that impactful. There are better spells to cast at this level. Another Paladin exclusive, Crusader's Mantle. This is an action to cast, and it is a concentration spell up to 1 minute. Holy power radiates from you in an aura with a 30 feet radius, awakening boldness and friendly creatures. Until the spell ends, the aura moves with you, centered on you. While in the aura, each non-hostile creature, this is redundant, while in the aura, each non-hostile creature in the aura, including you, deals an extra 1d4 radiant damage when it hits with a weapon attack. Okay, now we're actually talking. This is something that I call an unlimited aura, which is anyone in the aura gets the benefit, and that's it. It's not costing anything other than your concentration. So that's very different than, say, the first aura we covered in this spell level, Aura of Vitality. So this was an aura, but you still have to spend a bonus action to heal one target a turn. So that's limited to one target in the aura a turn. Whereas this aura down here, Crusader's Mantle, anyone in the aura just gets it. So even if the impact is low, unlimited auras can be impactful if you stack up a lot of allies in the aura. So very, very good for summoning compositions. I'm imagining this will be incredible on an Oathbreaker Paladin in a zombie apocalypse style composition where you're summoning zombies, those zombies are getting kills, which make more zombies. You could stack up so many targets in your aura because this is 30 feet. What is that? 9 meters. That's a lot. That's a very wide aura. So you could fit a lot of allies in there, and all of them could potentially add 1d4 radiant damage to their attacks. I mean, this is the kind of spell which on a typical composition isn't not very good. I mean, probably like a low B tier. I would not cast it very often. There are better spells to cast at this level. But in a composition that's built around it, that is a composition with summoning, it could easily be the most efficient spell that you cast at this level. So this is an S tier spell. Okay, moving on to 4th level spells. There actually were not many that have been confirmed in 4th level. We'll cover them now, starting with Banishment. This is an action to cast. It's a concentration spell up to 1 minute, and it's single target. You attempt to send one creature that you can see within range, that's a 60 feet range, to another plane of existence. The target must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be banished. If the target is native to the plane of existence you're on, you banish the target to a harmless demi-plane. While there, the target is incapacitated. The target remains there until the spell ends, at which point the target reappears in the space it left, or in the nearest unoccupied space if that space is occupied. If the target is native to a different plane of existence than the one you are on, the target is banished with a faint popping noise, returning to its home plane. If the spell ends before 1 minute has passed, the target reappears in the space it left, or in the nearest unoccupied space if that space is occupied. Otherwise, the target doesn't return. And when you cast a spell with a spell slot of 5th level or higher, you can target one additional creature for each slot level above 4. Okay, so it's a save or suck spell, single target, and those are usually best saved for boss fights or any fight where there's just a few really, really strong targets, like, say, the Githyanki Patrol. It's single target, so you want to use it on a high impact target. And what it seems to be saying is that you suspend that target. The fight goes on for as long as you maintain concentration, and then when you drop concentration, they're going to be back in the fight. But what it allows you to do is instantly remove a target from combat, which gives you a big boost for action economy. Take out all the other enemies in the encounter, and then prepare yourself, resummon them, and then kill them as quickly as you can. And that is a very, very good strategy. This is a great spell. I could see Banishment being very useful, and depending on how it's implemented, there are some ways that you could combo this with other spells that we'll get to later. So yeah, Banishment is a very big deal for me. I'm excited about this one. I want to play around with it and play around comboing spells with it. Next up is Staggering Smite. This is a Paladin exclusive. The next time you hit a creature with a melee weapon, right, so it's a smite spell. You guys know the deal on this one. It's a smite spell that deals an extra 4d6 psychic damage to the target and they must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, and can't take reactions until the end of its next turn. For a 4th level spell slot, this is very underwhelming to me. Technically, it's damage and crowd control, which are always at least average, so I'll give it a B tier. Next up is Wall of Fire. You create a Wall of Fire, and by the way, this is an action to cast, and it's concentration up to a minute. You create a Wall of Fire on a solid surface within range. You can make the wall up to 60 feet long, 20 feet high, 1 foot thick, blah blah blah. We don't have to go over all the dimensions, that's not as important. When the wall appears, each creature within its area must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 5 die 8 fire damage, or half as much damage on a successful one. One side of the wall selected by you when you cast a spell deals 5 die 8 fire damage to each creature that ends its turn within 10 feet of that side or inside of that wall. A creature takes the same damage when it enters the wall for the first time on a turn, or if it ends its turn there. The other side of the wall deals no damage. Okay, so when you summon this wall, it's probably going to take up a small area, but the actual radius of the AoE is 10 feet going one direction. Theoretically, you could summon this and have a person standing right beside it, but on the safe side of the spell, and hit people with attacks with a reach weapon. So that's interesting. Basically, this spell, the way I'm envisioning it, is it will replace Cloud of Daggers for its spell level. I've actually done an analysis of damage. So here I've calculated average damage per cast, assuming you have around a 65% chance of hitting with a save spell. This is something I've done all through early access. Here we are at Wall of Fire. It should be a 4th level spell. I don't know why I have it under 5th. Is it a 5th level spell? No, it's 4th. Alright, I'll fix that later. It's averaging, assuming 65%, it'll be averaging around a 18 to 19 damage, whereas Cloud of Daggers, where's my Cloud of Daggers? Up here is averaging 20. So it's averaging a little less than Cloud of Daggers, but it is a much better AoE than Cloud of Daggers is. So the Dagger Ball comp, if you guys are familiar with my early access comps, where you summon Cloud of Daggers and you push targets into it, I could definitely see Wall of Fire replacing Cloud of Daggers for the hoop in Dagger Ball. I guess it'd be Fireball at that point, but that's just confusing. Altogether, good spell. Definitely, I'd give it an A tier. Next up, Otiluke's Freezing Sphere is a 4th level spell. It's an action to cast concentration up to 1 minute. A sphere of shimmering force encloses a creature or object of large size or smaller within range, so it's a single target spell. An unwilling creature must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature is enclosed for the duration. Nothing, not physical objects, energy, or other spell effects, can pass through the barrier, in or out, though a creature in the sphere can breathe there. The sphere is immune to all damage, and a creature or object inside can't be damaged by attacks or effects originating from outside. Nor can a creature inside the sphere damage anything outside of it. The sphere is weightless and just large enough to contain the creature or object inside. An enclosed creature can use its action to push against the sphere's walls, and thus roll the sphere at up to half the creature's speed. Similarly, the globe can be picked up and moved by other creatures. A Disintegrate spell targeting the globe destroys it without harming anything inside of it. So this is a little bit like Banishment, where you're locking down a target, and they're not going to be able to do anything to you, but you're also not going to be able to do anything to them. But that's fine, because you can take them out of the fight temporarily, giving you a big boost for action economy for the remaining enemies in the encounter. You take care of them, and then you cancel your concentration and dust off the last remaining guy by rushing him down with multiple targets. It's a very good strategy, so this spell is at least as good as Banishment, but it seems like there's this added effect with this. They could also cast it on allies to protect them. So if you have an ally who is very far out of position, is about to die, you can get Otiluke's Freezing Spear, and enemies can't kill them, and they have to redirect to some other target. If Banishment doesn't synergize with the spell that we're going to be covering in a bit, this one definitely will. So we'll maybe come back to this, but I see this being at least as good as Banishment, so I give it an A tier. That's it for 4th level spells. Moving on to 5th now, we'll start with Banishing Smite. This is a Paladin spell. Now notice Paladins cannot reach 4th or 5th level spells with the level cap of 12. So the only class that can actually get Banishing Smite is the Bard with Magical Secrets. That's the only reason it's in the game. This is a Smite spell, so you guys know the deal. With this Smite spell, the attack deals an extra 5d10 force damage. Additionally, if this attack reduces the target to 50 hit points or fewer, you banish it. And it's just like the banishment effect of the Banish spell. While there, the target is incapacitated. It remains there until the spell ends, at which point the target reappears in the space it left, or the nearest unoccupied space. So the concentration on this spell actually matters, because you're going to smite it, and if the target hits and reduces it below 50 hit points, it's banished without a saving throw. Am I reading that right? Yes, there is no saving throw to resist the banish. This is really, really good. It's like Banishment, except way more reliable, as long as it's under a certain hit point total. So it's kind of like the sleep spell version of the banishment spell. So like just how sleep is to Tasha's laughter, Banishing Smite is to banishment. Yeah, I value that really highly. I could see this being S tier. The fact that it can only go to a bard is a big problem for me. I'm going to give it an A tier. Next up is Dispel Evil and Good. This is a cleric spell. Action to cast, concentration up to 1 minute. Shimmering energy surrounds and protects you from Fae, Undead, and creatures originating from the material plane. For the duration, Celestials, Elementals, Faes, Fiends, and Undead have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. Okay, you can end the spell early by using either of the following spell functions. Break Enchantment. As your action, you touch a creature you can reach that is charmed, frightened, or possessed by Celestial, and Elemental, a Fae, or a Fiend. The creatures that you touch is no longer charmed, frightened, or possessed. Okay. And then Dismissal. You make a melee spell attack against Celestial, an Elemental, a Fae, or a Fiend, or an Undead you can reach. On a hit, you attempt to drive the creature back to its home plane. If it succeeds on a Charisma saving throw, nothing happens, but if it fails, it's sent back. So I'm guessing, and it doesn't say there's a way to bring it back. So that's like a permanent dismissal effect. It's basically like killing the target. This is a very, very, very good spell against those limited types of enemies. That's Celestials, Elementals, Faes, Fiends, and Undead. So yeah, it's a classic example of a situationally amazing spell. So I give it an A tier. Next up, Greater Restoration. You imbue a creature you touch with positive energy to undo a debilitating effect. You can reduce the target's exhaustion level by 1, or end one of the following effects on the target if they are charmed or petrified. 1 curse, any reduction to the target's ability scores, or 1 effect reducing the target's hit point maximum. So the only real in-combat effect is canceling Charmed or Petrified, and Petrified's the really debilitating one, although I guess Charmed can be Domination, which is also pretty debilitating. And then besides that, it's just a part of your recovery phase after combat. I give Greater Restoration a B tier. Next up is Planar Binding. This spell has a casting time of 1 hour, and it lasts 24 hours. And then basically you bind an Elemental, Fae, or Fiend to your service. And then it kind of works like the Control Undead feature, where it's in your party for the next 24 hours. It's hard to know how good this is going to be, because the casting time of 1 hour is really weird, but I imagine they're just going to shorten the casting time. In which case, this is an insane spell. Absolutely insane. It's like a summon spell, but it's like Pokemon. You actually have to go out, find the enemy, and then catch it. But once you get it, it's just a straight up injection to your action economy. Amazing. I mean, and some of these, like the Elemental, for example, that we've seen in the game is incredible. So I imagine that the Faes or Fiends or Celestials or Elementals you can find are actually really good units to have in your party. I absolutely love something like this. It supports creative play. S tier all the way, easily. Amazing. Next up, Dominate Person. This is a 1-action, single-target spell, concentration up to 1 minute. You attempt to beguile a humanoid that you can see within range. It must succeed a Wisdom saving throw, or be charmed by you for the duration. If you or creatures that are friendly to you are fighting it, it has advantage on the saving throw. While the target is charmed, you have a telepathic link with it for as long as the two of you are within the same plane of existence. You can use this telepathic link to issue commands. You can specify a simple and general course of action, such as attack that creature, run over there, fetch that object. If the creature completes the order and doesn't receive further direction from you, it defends and preserves itself to the best of its ability. You can use your action to take a total and precise control of the target. Until the end of your next turn, the creature takes only the actions you choose, and doesn't do anything you don't allow it to do. During this time, you can also cause the creature to use a reaction, but this requires you to use your own reaction as well. Each time the target takes damage, it makes a new Wisdom saving throw against the spell. If the saving throw succeeds, the spell ends. Now, taking an enemy and making it an ally is much better than killing a target, because if you kill a target, it doesn't get any actions anymore. But taking its actions, that's a -1 from the enemy side of the equation. Now they're your actions, that's a +1 to your side of the equation, for a total of like a +2 in terms of action economy. That is very, very good. The only drawback to this spell is it seems like it's really niche to actually hit it. First off, the enemy has to fail a Wisdom saving throw that it's very likely to have advantage on. And then it gets one of those every time it takes damage. Like, for example, if it takes damage from the people that you are fighting. So if the enemy AI is smart, they will just target him and until he makes a saving throw, and then he's back into the fight. Still, this could be really good against, in some fights where there's one really strong unit. I'd probably give it an A tier. Next up is Hold Monster. This is a single target, one action, concentration up to 1 minute. It's just like Hold Person, except it works on monsters, not just persons, which makes it incredible. Hold Person is an S tier spell. Hold Monster is an S tier spell, easily. Now, the big reason that paralyzing a target is so good, if you aren't familiar with early access, is not only are you canceling their actions, but attacks made against that target within melee range of them automatically hit, and that hit is automatically converted into a crit. So once you hit a creature with a paralyze effect, like Hold Person or Hold Monster, if you focus fire them, they're just dead before they ever get a chance to re-roll that Wisdom saving throw. You just absolutely wipe them out. So really, it's kind of like a boost to your damage as more than it is an actual control spell. Yeah, so good. S tier easily. Cloudkill. Cloudkill is an old classic from Baldur's Gate. One of my favorite combos in the original Baldur's Gate series was to cast Cloudkill and then have my Summon Skeletons run in it and attack enemies. Or Stinking Cloud as well, is the same thing with Stinking Cloud. It would deal damage or crowd control them, and then your Summon Skeletons were immune because it was a poison effect. They'd run all over and kill everyone. It was super fun. And theoretically, I think the same kind of thing should work in Baldur's Gate 3. So let's read what the spell does. It takes an action to cast. It's concentration up to 10 minutes. You create a 20-foot radius sphere of poisonous yellow-green fog centered on a point you choose within range. The fog spreads around corners, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to deal with that. It's a 20-foot radius cloud effect. When a creature enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn, or starts its turn there, that creature must make a Constitution saving throw. The creature takes 5d8 poison damage on a failed save, and half as much on a successful one. Creatures are affected even if they hold their breath and don't need to breathe. And then there's rules about the fog moving away from you. I'm not sure if those are going to be implemented. If you upcast it, it gains an extra 1d8 damage. So let's look at how much damage this is dealing. Just like Wall of Fire, it's dealing around an 18 to 19 damage per cast per target. So the real question is it a better targeting system than the Wall? And I honestly think not. I imagine that the Wall is better. So I should say that this is kind of a worse version of Wall of Fire. However, there's the opportunity of, like I said, that Undead are immune to poison damage, and they can run in there and attack all your enemies. So it's really good for that zombie apocalypse comp that we've talked about. And because of that, I am willing to give it the same A tier that I gave Wall of Fire. Alright, Conjure Elemental is next. This is a summoning spell that takes a minute to cast. I'm sure that they will be shortening that. It's concentration up to 1 hour, and you summon an elemental. I can't know what this does until we know what the elementals are, but as I've said in this video and in my previous ones, the one fire elemental that has been in early access was a beast of a unit. I mean, it's like healing itself like 40 hit points every round just from fire damage or something. It absolutely slaps. It's tanky. If we're getting something like that, this is going to be an amazing summoning spell. And when you cast a spell with a spell slot of a 6 level or higher, the challenge rating increases by 1. So theoretically, you could summon an even better thing. I'm not sure if that's how they're going to do it. Either way, this is a Druid and Wizard spell. It's a summoning spell, and it's going to be beast. I give it an S tier because I think summoning compositions are going to be good compositions you can build around, and this is going to be one of the spells that enables that. So it's very easily a spell you can build around that's S tier for Conjure Elemental. Next up is Insect Plague. This is an action to cast, range of 300 feet, which is a lot, concentration up to 10 minutes. A swarming, biting cloud of locusts fills a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point you choose within range. Each creature in it must make a Constitution saving throw. A creature takes 4d10 piercing damage on a failed save and half as much on a successful one. A creature must also make the saving throw when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or ends there. So we can go Insect Plague. It's dealing comparable damage to Wall of Fire or Cloudkill. It's also 20-foot radius, but it's piercing damage. So basically it's like a kind of less good version of Wall of Fire, but one spell level up. So I think that deserves a 1 tier level demotion. I give this a B tier. Telekinesis is next. This is a crazy one. It's available to wizards and sorcerers, a 5th level spell, 1 action, concentration up to 10 minutes. You gain the ability to move or manipulate creatures or objects by thought. When you cast a spell, and as your action each round for the duration, you can exert your will on one creature or object that you can see within range, causing the appropriate effect below. You can affect the same target round after round, or choose a new one at any time. If you switch targets, the prior target is no longer affected by the spell. So creature, here's how it works for creatures. You can try to move a creature huge or smaller. You make an ability check with your spellcasting ability, contested by the creature's strength check. If you win the contest, you move the creature up to 30 feet in any direction, including upward, but not beyond the range of the spell. Until the end of your next turn, the creature is restrained in your telekinetic grip. A creature lifted upward is suspended in mid-air. On subsequent rounds, you can use your action to attempt to maintain your telekinetic grip on the creature by repeating the contest. So not only is this taking your concentration, it's also taking your action. And then you are doing a contested skill check of your spellcasting ability against their strength. But if you do that, you can suspend the creature in the air or move it wherever you want on your turn. This will be fantastic for dagger ball comps. I mean, you can just pick up a target, move it into your Cloud of Daggers or your Wall of Fire or your Cloudkill. It's going to run away, but you can just pick it up again next turn and move it right back. Amazing. Also, if the target only has melee attacks, you could, I guess, suspend it in the air. And then you can just shoot it while it's up there and it's doing nothing. So you've effectively canceled that target's action. All of that is pretty good. But then there's rules for objects. You can also move an object that weighs up to 1,000 pounds. If the object isn't being worn or carried, you automatically move it up to 30 feet in any direction, but not beyond the range of the spell. If the object is worn or carried by a creature, you must make an ability check with your spellcasting ability contested by the strength check. Okay, so if it's being worn, it basically becomes like moving a creature. That makes sense. You can exert fine control on objects with your telekinetic grip, such as manipulating a simple tool, opening a door or container, stowing or retrieving an item from an open container, or pouring the contents from a vial. Now, in combat, what I imagine you do with this is you lift up something heavy, like say a boulder, you move it above an enemy's head, and then you just drop it on them. And that's going to do damage depending on how heavy the item is. I'm really imagining that this is going to be a fantastic spell. It has out-of-combat applications for solving puzzles. It has crowd control application for suspending a creature or moving it into your AoE damaging spells. Or it has just a straight-up every round drop a heavy object on someone use. And it's hard to know how good that's going to be, but if we know anything from the Divinity Original Sin games, probably is going to do a lot of damage. You're getting that every round for 10 minutes. Amazing. Telekinesis might be S tier, but until I know the damage numbers, I'm giving it an A tier. Next up, Seeming. This spell allows you to change the appearance of any number of creatures that you can see within range. You give each target you choose a new illusory appearance. An unwilling target can make a charisma saving throw, and if it succeeds, it is affected by this spell. Okay, basically you change the appearance of your allies as well as yourself, and there's all these rules around it, but this is not a combat spell. So it's RP tier. Next up is Contagion. I'm excited about this one, guys, so if you're thinking of tuning out, pay attention. This is a one-action spell. It doesn't require your concentration, and it lasts 7 days. So forever. Your touch inflicts disease. You make a melee spell attack against a creature within your reach, so it's melee range. On a hit, the target is poisoned. Poisoned is a condition which is kind of mediocre. At the end of each of the poisoned target's turns, the target must make a Constitution saving throw. If the target succeeds on 3 of these saves, it is no longer poisoned, and the spell ends. If the target fails 3 of these saves, the target is no longer poisoned, but choose, that's important, one of the diseases below. The target is subjected to the chosen disease for the spell's duration. So here are the diseases that you can choose from. I'm not going to read them all. If you want to know, pause here and read them. I'm just going to point out 2 obvious choices. The first is Flesh Rot. This makes the creature have disadvantage on charisma checks and vulnerability to all damage. That's basically instant death. And probably even better than Flesh Rot is Slimy Doom. The creature has disadvantage on Constitution checks and Constitution saving throws, and in addition, whenever the creature takes damage, it is stunned until the end of its next turn. So if I'm thinking of this right, as long as you deal at least 1 instance of damage to it around, it's perma-stunned. So again, instant death. Choose one of these, and the target is neutralized. It is practically guaranteed dead at the end of the fight for that single target. So all of that is amazing, but the spell has some very serious drawbacks. First drawback is that it's a melee spell attack, so you have to enter melee range with your caster, which can be bad on some casters. If you have shield, though, probably not a problem. The big drawback is, it's not likely you're going to get to these devastating crowd control effects in a shorter amount of time than if you just killed this guy by focus firing them with damage spells and attacks, right? Because there's the initial saving throw, and then they have to fail 3 more saving throws. So even if they fail every saving throw, that's 4 in a row, it's going to be 3 turns before you get one of these effects. Now, often, fights are pretty much decided in 3 turns. Not ended in 3 turns, but decided. Realistically, this spell isn't good. You're never going to get the effect in enough time to make it valuable. You could probably just rush this target down. And then imagine if it makes its saving throws, which, I mean, it could roll a 20 in there, right? Like, it's having to fail 4 of them. If it makes one of them, it's just delayed by another turn. So, on its own, I'd say the spell is fun, but not really worth casting until you remember that it does not require concentration. And you can absolutely chain this with one of the suspending effects like Banishment or Otiluke's Freezing Sphere that we talked about before. I'm not sure how it's going to work with Banishment, but it should definitely work with Otiluke's, where if you hit that target with Contagion before you put it in Otiluke's Freezing Sphere, it still goes through turns, it just can't do anything on its turn. So you've suspended it for however many turns you need until you kill all of its enemies, and then when you end that sphere, you can end it, instantly stun lock it. You've completely neutralized the target. Now, it's taking 2 very high-level, valuable spell slots to do this. It's a lot of saving throws to land it. But if you can land this on a boss or a really, really powerful target, it is an instant death combo. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And it's so hard to even think of how to rank a spell like Contagion. If you just cast it by yourself, it's probably C tier, but if the combos, if it works with Otiluke's Freezing Sphere or Banishment, probably S tier. So I'm just going to give it an S tier, guys. Contagion, S tier. Just keep in mind, you have to do it on the right fight with the right combo. Next up is Flame Strike. This is a cleric spell. I'm not even going to read what this spell does because it's just a worse version of Fireball. I don't even think Fireball is that good of a spell. Flame Strike is C tier. Mass Cure Wounds is next. This is available to Bards, Clerics, and Druids. It takes an action to cast. The effect is instantaneous. Choose up to 6 creatures within a 30-foot radius sphere centered on that point. Each target regains hit points equal to 3d8, plus your spellcasting ability modifier. This spell has no effect on undead or constructs. It's kind of like a worse version than Mass Healing Word, if you're asking me, so yeah, it's RP tier. I just don't think you ever cast this. If you're going to cast a Mass Healing spell, it's going to be Mass Healing Word because it is cheaper in terms of action economy and in terms of spell level slots. Next up is Wall of Stone. This is a druid, sorcerer, or wizard spell. Action to cast, it's concentration up to 10 minutes. A non-magical wall of solid stone springs into existence, and then there's rules for its dimensions. If the wall cuts through a creature's space when you summon it, that creature is pushed to one side of the wall, your choice. If a creature would be surrounded on all sides by the wall, that creature can make a dexterity saving throw. On a success, it can use its reaction to move up to its speed so that it is no longer enclosed by the wall. The wall can have any shape you desire, though it can't occupy the same space as a creature or object. That's all it is, guys. You're summoning a wall. So how good is this? Well, it depends on if targets at this level, enemies at this level, can easily maneuver around or over your wall. I'm going to assume that they can't. I'm also going to assume that it can guard against things like arrows or ranged attacks. It can break vision. Some spells automatically end. Concentration spells, they automatically end if it breaks vision. So I think it's going to be useful for all of that stuff. Definitely has situational uses, but in those situations, it's very good, which is A tier for Wall of Stone. Next up, Cone of Cold. One action, instantaneous effect. A blast of cold air erupts from your hands. Each creature in a 60-foot cone must make a Constitution saving throw. A creature takes 8d8 cold damage on a failed save, half as much on a successful one. A creature killed by the spell becomes frozen until it thaws. There's upcasting, but that's not important to us. This is available to sorcerers and wizards. By the way, Sunbeam was druid, sorcerer, and wizards. How do I rank Cone of Cold? Well, we can go over here. 36 damage on a hit, half as much on a miss. It'll average 29.7 damage per target per cast. If we are using this against wet targets, that is doubled to roughly 60 damage per target on a cast. And it's going to be hitting a lot of targets because its AoE is very wide. I just imagine this is going to be the ultimate in AoE blasting spells. This one or Chain Lightning, which we'll discuss in a bit. Either way, it's extremely, extremely good. But it's hard to give it S tier because what's really S tier is comboing it with a spell like Create Water or anything which gives the wet condition. So I usually give the S tier to the condition spells and an A tier to the actual damage spells. So it's A tier for Cone of Cold. Next up is Destructive Wave. Casting time of one action. You strike the ground, creating a burst of divine energy that ripples outward from you. Each creature you choose within 30 feet must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or take 5d6 thunder damage, as well as 5d6 radiant or necrotic damage, your choice, and be knocked prone. A creature that succeeds on its saving throw takes half as much damage and isn't knocked prone. Destructive Wave right here. I accidentally grouped it under 6th level. As we can see, it's 35 damage on a hit, half as much on a save. It'll average 29 damage per target, and it knocks targets prone, but none of that is really good for this spell level. It's a paladin exclusive, so you're going to have to be using magical secrets on a bard to get this, and I don't really think it's worth that. There are better spells to get with magical secrets. I give Destructive Wave a C tier. And that is it for 5th level spells. Okay, moving on to 6th level spells now. Starting off with Globe of Invulnerability. This is an action to cast, concentration up to 1 minute. An immobile, faintly shimmering barrier springs into existence in a 10-foot radius around you and remains for the duration. Any spell of 5th level or lower cast from outside the barrier can't affect creatures or objects within it, even if the spell is cast using a higher level spell slot. Such a spell can target creatures and objects within the barrier, but the spell has no effect on them. Similarly, the area within the barrier is excluded from the areas affected by such spells. This is an insane spell. So basically it's creating like a bubble effect similar to the silent spell. 10-foot radius, which isn't big, but it's enough to fit your team in. And no spells that are 5th level or lower, so basically any spell that isn't a 6th level spell in this game does not affect anyone within it. Basically, if you have a ranged attacking team, you can create a little globe of invulnerability around them and just attack everyone outside, and they are forced to walk into you if they want to fight you, at least as far as spells are concerned. So if you have the upper hand as far as range attacking goes, you can use this to neutralize any spells which would force you to move. Just in general, spells are so devastating. Globe of Invulnerability can make or break a fight. I am predicting it is S tier for the spell. Next up, Otto's Irresistible Dance. Has a casting time of 1 action, concentration up to 1 minute. Choose one creature that you can see within range. The target begins a comic dance in place, shuffling, tapping its feet, and capering for the duration. Creatures that can't be charmed are immune to this spell. A dancing creature must use all of its movement to dance without leaving its space and has disadvantage on dexterity saving throws and attack rolls. While the target is affected by the spell, other creatures have advantage on attack rolls against it. As an action, a dancing creature makes a wisdom saving throw to regain control of itself. On a successful save, the spell ends. Now this is a pretty good spell, except that it's a 6th level spell, and there are spells that are 3rd level and lower that do this and more. Hold Person, Hold Monster, these are all better than Otto's Irresistible Dance at a lower spell slot cost. It's RP tier for Otto's Irresistible Dance. Next up, Wall of Thorns. You create a wall of tough, pliable, tangled brush bristling with needle-sharp thorns. The wall appears within range on a solid surface and lasts for the duration. You choose to make the wall up, So we've been over this, it's just another wall spell. Except this wall spell deals 7d8 piercing damage, or half as much on a successful save. It targets a dexterity saving throw. Creature can move through the wall, albeit slowly and painfully. For every 1 foot a creature moves to the wall, it must spend 4 feet of movement. Furthermore, the first time a creature enters the wall on its turn, or ends its turn there, the creature must make a dexterity saving throw. It takes 7d8 slashing damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. So this is like double difficult terrain. It's quartering enemy movement. It's dealing 7d8 piercing damage. We can go to our save spell analysis. Here's Wall of Thorns. It'll average 25, basically 26 damage, which is a lot. It's definitely a lot. So yeah, it's overtaking Wall of Fire for that control spell go-to on any Dagger Ball comp. So I am giving Wall of Thorns an A tier. Next up, Arcane Gate. This is a 1-action casting time, range 500 feet, concentration up to 10 minutes. You create a teleportation portal that remains open for the duration. Choose 2 points on the ground that you can see, 1 point within 10 feet of you, and 1 point within 500 feet of you. A circular portal 10 feet in diameter opens over each point. If the portal would open in the space occupied by a creature, the spell fails, and the casting is lost. The portals are 2-dimensional glowing rings filled with mist. That's just flavor text. Basically, if you've played the game Portal, Arcane Gate is that game, basically. You create 2 gates, and then moving between those 2 gates, it is as if the distance between those 2 gates is just adjacent. It's completely a movement spell, but it's also kind of like a terrain creating spell, where I imagine you could fly up somewhere that's very difficult to reach, create an Arcane Gate for the rest of your team to enter, and now enemies that want to attack you in melee have to walk through that portal. So you're creating a bottleneck scenario, which is great. I just imagine that this spell has a lot of creative uses and will be impactful, so I'm giving it an A tier. Next up, Hero's Feast. This is a casting time of 10 minutes, which it's hard to know how they're going to implement that, but basically, once we read the spell, you'll see it's the kind of spell that you use on a short or long rest. I imagine it's going to modify a long rest. Let's read over it. You bring forth a great feast, including magnificent food and drink. The feast takes 1 hour to consume and disappears at the end of that time, and the beneficial effects don't set in until this hour is over. Up to 12 creatures can partake of the feast. A creature that partakes of the feast gains several benefits. The creature is cured of all diseases and poisons, becomes immune to poison and being frightened, and makes all wisdom saving throws with advantage. Its hit point maximum also increases by 2 die 10, and it gains the same number of hit points. These benefits last 24 hours. So it's like a buff that you get on your long rest, where it's giving you camp food. If you eat the camp food, you get a buff until your next long rest, and that buff gives you advantage in all wisdom saving throws, already amazing. Increases your hit point maximum by 2 die 10, and you gain the same number of hit points. So it's like an improved aid in that regard. The buffs itself are nice, but not incredible when you consider that this is a 6th level spell that you are casting. However, the fact that they are completely free as far as action economy goes, that is what makes this so good. There's just no reason not to cast it. It's worth a 6th level spell slot, and there's really no other opportunity cost except for that 6th level spell slot. So every person on your team, by the time you reach the spell, should have advantage in all wisdom saving throws. Incredible. And then this will average around 11 more hit points per character, adding so much more durability for basically free. Hero's Feast is an S tier spell, and it's a good reason why you want at least one cleric and druid in your party. Next up, Planar Ally. You beseech an otherworldly entity for aid. The being must be known to you, a god, a primordial, a demon prince, or some other being of cosmic power. That entity sends a celestial, an elemental, or a fiend loyal to it to aid you, making the creature appear in an occupied space within range. And then there's a bunch of rules around that. I don't know if any of these rules are going to transfer, but basically this is your end game planar summon. You're going to summon a demon, an angel, a high level elemental to fight for you, concentration free, and I believe it lasts, I think if we translate these rules, it's going to last until your next long rest. S tier. Yeah, definitely you can build a comp around this. There are summon spells going all the way up, all the spell levels. This should be the ultimate one. That's why I'm sure Larian has included it in the game. S tier spell, Planar Ally. It is available to clerics. Clerics are getting a lot of S tier spells at this level. Next up, Disintegrate. This is a casting time 1 action. It's an attack spell. So what happens is you target one creature. That creature must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 10 die 6 plus 40 force damage. If they succeed on their save, they take no damage at all. The target is disintegrated if this damage leaves it with 0 points. A disintegrated creature and everything it is wearing and carrying except magic items are reduced to a pile of fine gray dust. The creature can be restored to life only by means of true resurrection or a wish spell. The spell automatically disintegrates a large or smaller non-magical object or a creation of magical force. If the target is a huge or larger object or creation of force, this spell disintegrates a 10-foot cube portion of it. A magic item is unaffected by this spell. So if we look, it will deal 75 damage on a failed save, 0 on a successful one, for an average of 48.75 damage, but it's very unreliable. I mean, it's a lot of damage if you hit. A lot of single target damage if you hit, but to me, there are much better things that you can do with your 6th level spell slot than just doing direct damage to a single target. I give this spell a C tier. Bear in mind, these rules are implying that you will not get loot off of the target that you kill with the spell, and that is how it worked in the original Baldur's Gate games. However, it is saying magic items are unaffected, so we'll have to see how they implement that. Either way, just as an attack spell, I don't think it's very good. C tier for Disintegrate. Flesh to Stone. This is a casting time of 1 action, concentration up to 1 minute. You attempt to turn one creature that you can see within range into stone. If the target's body is made of flesh, the creature must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, it is restrained as its flesh begins to harden. On a successful save, the creature isn't affected. A creature restrained by the spell must make another Constitution saving throw at the end of each of its turns. If it successfully saves against the spell 3 times, the spell ends. If it fails saves 3 times, it's turned into stone and subjected to the petrified condition for the duration. The successes and failures don't need to be consecutive. Keep track of both until the target collects 3 of a kind. So this is a lot like the Contagion spell that we saw, except it's petrifying a target, and it uses your concentration. I do not know why you would ever use this over Contagion from a tactical perspective. Contagion has a better effect, does not require concentration, and 1 spell level lower, so Flesh to Stone is RP tier for me. Next up is Windwalk. You and up to 10 willing creatures that you can see within range assume a gaseous form for the duration, appearing as wisps of cloud. While in this cloud form, a creature has a flying speed of 300 feet and has resistance to damage from non-magical weapons. The only actions a creature can take in this form are the dash action. I don't really think this has any use inside of combat. If you're using it just to reposition, you're probably better off using Arcane Gate. So this is just a way to travel very quickly. I don't know how that's going to be useful in Baldur's Gate 3 out of combat, but in combat, not really useful. I give Windwalk an RP tier. Next up is Sunbeam. This is 1 action to cast, concentration up to 1 minute. A beam of brilliant light flashes out from your hand in a 5-foot wide, 60-foot line. Each creature in the line must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 6d8 radiant damage and is blinded until your next turn. On a successful save, it takes half as much damage and isn't blinded by the spell. Undead and oozes have disadvantage on this saving throw. You can create a new line of radiance as your action on any turn until the spell ends. For the duration, a mote of brilliant radiance shines in your hand. It sheds bright light in a 30-foot radius and dim light in an additional 30 feet. The light is sunlight, so some enemies are going to be vulnerable to sunlight, so this 30-foot aura will impose a disadvantage on them. Let's look how this works out as far as damage goes. It'll average 27 damage on a hit, assuming a 65% chance to hit. The average damage will be 22.275, so basically 22.3 per target every round. And the targeting system on it is quite good. A 5-foot wide, 60-foot line. This is basically like a Lux ultimate if you played League of Legends, but you're getting one of these every round for as long as you maintain concentration, and it's also blinding targets. This will be very, very good at taking out trash mobs. Basically, if you cast a spell, your caster kind of becomes a striker. The fact that it does damage on a mist is really good. I could see this being really good. Imagine also if you're hasted. You could do this twice. Yeah, it has a CC effect. There's just a lot here that's good. I give Sunbeam an A tier. Blade Barrier. Blade Barrier is a cleric exclusive spell, casting time 1 action, concentration up to 10 minutes. You create a vertical wall of whirling, razor-sharp blades made of magical energy. The wall appears within range and lasts for the duration. You can make a straight wall up to 100 feet long. It's all the wall rules which we've been over before. When a creature enters the wall's area for the first time on a turn, or it starts its turn there, the creature must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 6d10 slashing damage. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage. So, it's a wall that does 6d10 slashing damage. Dexterity saving throw to target. We can go over to our damage spell analysis here. It's 33 damage average on a hit, 16.5 on a miss. It'll average around 27 damage per target, and it's slashing, which is a little bit better than Wall of Thorns. I rank it about equal in value to Wall of Thorns. Is kind of the cleric's equivalent to that. So that is A tier for Blade Barrier. Next up, Chain Lightning. 1 action, instantaneous effect. You create a bolt of lightning that arcs towards a target of your choice that you can see within range. 3 bolts then leap from that target to as many as 3 other targets, each of which must be within 30 feet of the first target. A target can be a creature or an object and can only be targeted by one of the bolts. The target must make a dexterity saving throw or take 10d8 lightning damage on a failed save, half as much on a successful one. So here we go for Chain Lightning. That's 45 damage, half as much on a save, averaging around 37 damage per target, and it is very likely to hit the maximum amount of targets just as long as they're within 30 feet of each other. It completely avoids your allies, and it's dealing lightning damage, which you double against wet targets. So it is Chain Lightning and Cone of Cold for the late game on any team composition that's about abusing the wet condition. So yeah, this is incredible. Again, it's kind of like an S tier spell, except I usually give S tier to the spells that give the condition. That means A tier for Chain Lightning. Incredible spell though, definitely high A tier. Next up is Wall of Ice. This is another wall spell. We've been over lots of them before. It's 1 action, concentration 10 minutes. This one's going to create an ice wall though. Enemies in the wall, whenever you summon it, take 10d6 cold damage. If they fail a dexterity saving throw, half as much on a successful save. The wall can be attacked. It has AC 12, 30 hit points per 10-foot section, is vulnerable to fire damage. A creature moving through the sheet of frigid air for the first time on a turn must make a Constitution saving throw, or the creature takes 5d6 cold damage, half as much on a successful save. So just on the initial cast, we're looking at around 29 damage per target hit, and it's cold damage, which means it can get doubled, and then you're getting a wall effect out of it. But the actual persistence of the wall effect is less than spells like Blade Barrier or Wall of Thorns. Altogether, I'd say it's about equal to them in value. It doesn't have the same persistent effect value, but has a little bit more burst damage because it's cold. I give Wall of Ice an A tier. Next up is Heal. Choose a creature that you can see within range. A surge of positive energy washes through the creature, causing it to regain 70 hit points. It also ends blindness, deafness, and any disease affecting the target. The spell has no effect on constructs or undead. If you're using this to defeat a debilitating disease, it's really good. A guaranteed 70 hit points is also not bad. In a pinch, this can actually be good. You're spending 1 action to heal a target, and especially if that target has any resistances, you're likely going to absorb more than 1 action worth of damage. A heal like this is actually useful in combat. I give it a B tier. Circle of Death is next. 1 action, instantaneous effect. A sphere of negative energy ripples out in a 60-foot radius from a point within range. Each creature in that area must make a Constitution saving throw, or it takes 8d6 necrotic damage, half as much on a successful one. This is basically like a necrotic damage version of Fireball, but with double the radius. It'll average 23.1 damage per cast per target hit. If we go up to Fireball, you can see it's identical. So it's a double radius Fireball, 6th level spell. This isn't very good. I give Circle of Death a C tier. Next up is Create Undead. I could read through all of these rules, but the gist of Create Undead is that it is your final level undead summon. But yeah, what to say here? It's S tier. I think summoning comps should be really good. This is the creme de la creme of undead summoning. It's an S tier spell. I don't know exactly what it's going to be able to summon though. So I am imagining that Larian will make good summons for us to choose from. If they don't, it could be less than S tier, but I am predicting an S tier for Create Undead. Next up is Eyebite. This is a 1 action to cast, concentration up to 1 minute. It's a little interesting. There's various effects from it. So for the spell's duration, that is 1 minute or until you lose concentration, your eyes become an inky void imbued with dread power. 1 creature of your choice within 60 feet of you that you can see must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be affected by one of the following effects of your choice for the duration. On each of your turns until the spell ends, you can use your action to target another creature, but can't target a creature again if it has succeeded on a saving throw against this casting of Eyebite. So basically, you're going to cast a single target control effect. One of these, we're going to go over them. And then every turn for the next 1 minute, or for as long as you maintain concentration, you could do it again against a new target, which is great. For 1 spell slot used, you can get potentially several turns worth of a control spell. So what are the actual single target control spells? There's Asleep, Panicked, and Sickened. Of course, they all target wisdom saving throw. With Asleep, the target falls asleep. With Panic, the target is frightened of you. On each of its turn, the frightened creature must take a dash action to move away from you by the safest and shortest available route. If it stops being able to see you or moves at least 60 feet away from you, the effect ends. And then Sickened, the target has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. At the end of each of its turns, it can make a wisdom saving throw. If it succeeds, the effect ends. So Sickened is not good. Panicked can be used to proc attacks of opportunity as the target runs away from you. So that is good, but honestly, I can't imagine that it would be better than just putting targets asleep. The target fails a saving throw, it goes asleep, and then you're guaranteed crits against it. Incredible. So basically, this is like a wisdom saving throw version of sleep that you can cast every round for up to 1 minute. I like this a lot. I give Eyebite an A tier. Next up is Harm. You unleash a virulent disease on a creature that you can see within range. The target must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 14 dice 6 necrotic damage, or half as much damage on a successful save. The damage can't reduce the target's hit points below 1. If the target fails the saving throw, its hit point maximum is reduced for 1 hour by an amount equal to the necrotic damage that it took. An effect that removes disease allows a creature's hit point maximum to turn to normal before time passes. Basically, Harm's just doing a lot of damage. How much damage? We can take a look here. 49 damage average on a hit, 24.5 on a miss, for an average of 40.425 on a cast. It's a little bit like Disintegrate, except less all or nothing. I give Harm a B tier. Single target, a large amount of single target damage is always good, but with a 6th level spell slot, there's better effects that you can get than this. Anyways, it's always just kind of average, so that's B tier for me. And that is it for all of the spells. Alright, I think we've covered enough in this video. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. If you like this and you aren't already subscribed, please consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing a lot of content like this once the game is released, and there's still some video topics I'd like to cover just for posterity in between now and then. We've got about 2 weeks, so subscribe, stay tuned, there's more content coming. Okay, that means there's only one thing left to do. Kinda gotta get centered for this one. You must gather your party before venturing forth. Well, I have gathered my party, and they are my supporters on Patreon. I cannot thank you guys enough. I'm gonna read out some names now. To the newest members of our Patreon, there's a lot of you that's just joined. Eric, Peter, Lars, Thomas, Mats, Jeff, and Brett, thank you so much for joining, guys. Welcome aboard. To my old crew, Ermac, Old Camuffle, Scott, Soul Servant, Teal, Kaio, Gustavo, Merrick, Carlos, and Jeff B, thanks as always. And to my S tier patrons, Marchitar, Root 1, Aurelian, a special thank you to you guys. And of course, a special thank you to the guy who started it all, C.A. Castaway. Gentlemen, I won't let you down.